Dwarves are an iconic part of literally every fantasy setting ever, and 40k is no different. But because 40k is set in space, the Leagues of Votann have the added flair of being dwarves, but in space. If you like the sound of that, then boy have I got the faction for you. Okay, despite what I literally just said, and despite how the Games Workshop store page classifies them, the Votann aren't technically a distinct Xenos species. They're much more like abhumans, akin to beastmen or ogrins in how they evolved from baseline humanity, rather than how, say, the Eldari are a completely disconnected evolutionary pipeline. At some point during the Dark Age of technology, before the rise of the Imperium of Man, various groups of human colonists and miners set out for the galactic core, seeking the great material wealth contained there. To help them in their mission, the settlers brought ChatGPT with them, or, as it had become known at the time, the Votann ancestor cores, as well as advanced cloning technology known as the clone skin? Anyway, this piece of technology allowed the settlers to introduce a series of stable mutations to their DNA, leading to the settlers quickly adapting to the conditions of their new home, and creating a race both physically stronger and more resilient than a baseline human, as well as less psychically resonant and therefore more resistant to chaos. Unfortunately, all this genetic experimentation did have the side effect of making every single one of them 5'11". Upon arriving within the galactic core, the settlers quickly established various holds, heavily fortified cities, mines, industrial complexes or space stations, and sometimes all of the above. Basically, imagine Erebor but in space, and you'd be pretty much there in terms of vibe. Eventually, many of these holds joined together into a mercantile federation known as the Leagues of Votann, and there they have pretty much remained over the long millennia since, mostly content to stay within the core and mine, but sometimes sending prospector fleets out into the wider galaxy, either in search of wealth or further knowledge to bring back to their ancestor core. Some kin, as the members of the Leagues refer to themselves, even fought as mercenaries for Imperial, or sometimes Xenos, armies, which is what the original Squats were, as opposed to their modern incarnation as the Leagues, in case you were wondering. Votann society is surprisingly uncomplicated in comparison to most in 40k. Almost all kin belong to groupings known as kindred, each of whom inhabit a hold, which is in turn pledged to a wider conglomerate known as a league, at the centre of which is an ancestor core. Each hold is run by a Hearthspake council, while Carls serve as their military commanders, and is home to multiple professional guilds. All in all, classic dwarf stuff. If you paid attention to Warhammer Fantasy, like, at all, you'll know how all that works. Individually, kin are known to be stubborn, conservative, greedy dickheads. Again, dwarves, who are almost entirely beholden to the idea of risk versus reward, the desire for profit, and the concept of grudges, often forming military groups known as grudge bands, dedicated to wiping out a particularly irksome foe. On the other hand, kin also tend to be extremely loyal, and put familial duties and obligations above all else. Though not as fanatically religious as the Imperium of Man, the Votann revere their ancestors as guardians, and almost as gods, which probably has something to do with the fact that when a kin dies, their memories and experiences are uploaded to the core that oversaw their creation, both expanding the collective knowledge of their race, and allowing the individual to live on in the company of their forebears, in the closest thing the Votann have to an afterlife, being almost entirely psychically inert as mentioned previously. Also, just to be absolutely clear before I get any comments about it, Votann in-universe is the term the kin use to refer to the ancestor cores, not a term used to refer to the race itself. With that being said, anytime I use the term Votann in this script, I am most likely using it as shorthand to refer to the race, simply out of habit. Sorry about that. Because of their importance to the Leagues, both spiritually and practically, as near limitless repositories of the knowledge of millennia, and the means of production for much of the League's technology, the Ancestor Cores are a jealously guarded secret, in order to stop groups like the Admech from getting their grabby little mitts all over them. They are also suffering from a chronic case of Golden Throne Syndrome, which is to say they are right on the edge of collapsing and plunging their race into an age of darkness. but they probably won't ever actually get there, barring James Workshop having an exceptionally bad day and wanting to take it out on one group of players in particular. Being essentially very powerful computers, the ancestor cores were never designed to be run constantly for millennia, and as such have begun to run out of memory, as it were. The sheer weight of data that they have each taken on, as well as the constant interaction with kin who seek to ask them questions, have begun to slow down the cores, and in some cases even led to them developing distinct personalities. A question that may once have taken only minutes to answer can now take centuries, and as time goes on, the cores are growing increasingly weird, apparently. Like humanity with the Golden Throne, the kin have tried to remedy the situation, including installing modifications requested by the core itself, but they haven't found a permanent solution as of yet. As a race who diverged from humanity during the Dark Age of technology, and seem to have avoided most of the Age of Strife, the technology of the Leagues of Votann bears many similarities to that of the Imperium, though kin designs are often superior, and they possess a greater understanding of their underlying mechanics, having not developed the stigma around improvement and innovation that the Admech did, and therefore spending the intervening millennia actively advancing their knowledge. The kin also do not have the same stigma around robotics and artificial intelligence as the Imperium, leading to these absolutely adorable little guys being widespread in Votann society. These are ironkin, self-aware robots created by the ancestor cores to fulfill a specific labour or combat role, who are fully integrated into the species society as equals, as whether one is made from meat or metal, kin is kin. Despite this equality, the fact that the ironkin are ultimately programmed creations means that they are unable to truly experience emotion, instead simply simulating the emotion that the more human, for lack of a better term, kin experience, making it rare for an ironkin to show ambition or a desire to command. But not unheard of, you get weirdos in every breed. It's also the ironkin who are responsible for the FTL travel of the Leagues, with wayfinders functioning as more reliable navigators, who guide the kin's ships through the warp in a series of short jumps, often making for slower progress than a human ship, with the trade-off of being far safer and more accurate. In place of the astropathic choirs used by humanity for long-range communication, the Leagues of Votann send messages using the fanes contained within each hold, which are basically the USB ports of the ancestor cores. The Grimnir, a subsect of the Votann, are created with the rare genetic ability to interface with barrier tech in order to safely harness the power of the warp, and to communicate with the ancestor cores using the aforementioned fanes, to seek advice from the core itself, or to communicate near instantaneously over long distances. The opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum across the galaxy affected the Leagues of Votann perhaps the most out of any species in the galaxy, with the exception of humanity. And if you look at this lovely little map, it isn't hard to see why. Many kindred were forced to leave their holds, abandoning territory that had been held for millennia, and venturing out from the galactic core in search of more stable areas to settle, coming into conflict with many other species in the process. At the same time, the opening of new warp storms across the galaxy catapulted members of other species through both space and time into the galactic core, and so now the kin find themselves dealing with outsiders on a level unseen in their long history. So that was the Leagues of Votann, or the Squats, if you happen to be absolutely ancient. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot. Like, subscribe, all the rest. A huge thank you to my wonderful channel members: Vort, Kraydog, Jewish Dictionary, Tootsie Cat Meow, Emondo, SP Keating, Celtic99, Cersei and Victory Kaiser for supporting me, and I will see you all in the next video.